Find the slope of the graph of g of x at x equals c. Let's look at the first one. G of x is x times sine of x at c equals pi over 3. Well, if you want to find the slope of the graph or the slope of the tangent line to the graph, you first have to differentiate to find the g prime of x. What's the derivative of g of x? In this case, you have two functions of x that are multiplied together. You got y equals x and y equals sine of x that are multiplied together to form g of x. In this case, you are going to apply the product rule, which states that derivative of the product of the function 1 and function 2 is same thing as derivative of the first function times the second function plus the first function times derivative of the second function. So in this case, you are going to take derivative of x, which is 1, times the second function, which is sine of x. Then you're going to add it to x times the derivative of the second function, which is cosine of x. Now you want to find the slope at c equals pi over 3. So let's evaluate this at x equals pi over 3. So you have sine of pi over 3 plus pi over 3 times cosine of pi over 3. Well, sine of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2 plus pi over 3 times cosine of pi over 3, which is 1/2. So you get square root of 3 over 2 plus pi over 6 for the slope. Let's look at number 2. G of x is x squared plus 1 over x plus 1. In this case, you're dividing two functions of x. You got x plus 1 and you got x squared plus 1 on top. Let's actually make this 2, and you got x plus 1 on the bottom. In such cases, the derivative can be evaluated using the quotient rule, which states that derivative of a quotient of two functions, 2 and 1, is same thing as the first function times derivative of second function minus the derivative of the first function times the second function all over the first function squared. So let's try to evaluate this. In this case, g prime of x is going to be the first function, x plus 1, times derivative of x squared plus 1, which is 2x, minus x squared plus 1, so the second function, times the derivative of the first function, which is x plus, which is 1, so you're still going to have x squared minus plus 1, divided by x plus 1 squared. I guess you can simplify this, but in my case, since we know we are trying to evaluate this at c equals 0, I'm going to plug 0 right in, because when you multiply 0 by 2, you get 0, and you're multiplying it to something that's going to cancel out, and you got negative 0 plus 1 or negative 1, and you got 1 squared on the bottom. So negative 1 over 1 is going to give you negative 1 for the slope when x is 0. Last one, g of x is secant of x plus cotangent of x at c equals pi over 6. Well, what's g prime of x? Derivative of secant of x is secant x tangent x. Derivative of cotangent of x is negative cosecant squared of x. So plug pi over 6 into it. G prime at pi over 6. Secant of pi over 6 tangent of pi over 6 minus cosecant squared at pi over 6. Well, cosine of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 2. So secant of pi over 6 is going to be this flipped. So you have 2 over square root of 3 times tangent of pi over 6, which we know as square root of 3 over 3, minus cosecant squared of pi over 6. Well, we know sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So cosecant of pi over 6 is going to be 2, and you're squaring that, so you're going to have a 4. Well, this square root of 3 is cancelled out, so you get 2/3 minus 4, also known as negative 10/3.